I am wearing my smart blue suit, which means one of two things. Number one, I've either been at public inquiry, or number two, I've been at a job interview. Fortunately, it was actually number two, because public inquiry terrifies me. So I thought while I was still sort of in the headspace of the interview, I could do a bit of a, well, first of all, a catch up on as to why I'm interviewing for new jobs. And secondly, sort of talk through the main sectors in which planners can work. Although ironically, that job that I interviewed for just now was actually a full-time surveyor role. As a little get everyone up to speed on what's been going on in the life of Evelyn, at the back end of last year, I got made redundant, which isn't ideal. It's just one of those things, unfortunately. It's the economy we're in, and it happens to everyone at least some point in their career. People get made redundant. It's a fact of life. My father-in-law is quite the specialist in it, to be honest. So I took a bit of time out at the end of last year, and I travelled a little bit. My brother and his wife and their little girl are currently living in Singapore, so I went out to them for a few weeks, which was really nice. Had Christmas at home, had a bit of downtime, and now that we're into the new year, Happy New Year by the way, I'm sort of really kicking it up a gear in the job search. So I just went for an interview as a surveyor, as an in-house role, and it made me think that I think there's a lot of misconception about what planners do. I think certainly back in the old days, when I used to tell anyone what it was I did for work, and I would say I'm a planner, people would say, oh, so you're like the person from the council that says whether or not I can have an extension. So I thought I would debunk a few myths and talk about the kind of roles that planners can actually have. So the first role is that local authority role, which is someone who works for the council and may approve your extension. And now it goes without saying that planners at the council do a lot more than just approve people's extensions. Quite honestly, this is numerically the biggest chunk of work that council planners will have. A lot of the time it will be private residential, rear extensions, loft conversions, maybe converting a garage into a habitable room, people making changes to their house that may or may not be within permitted development remits, or people maybe who live in a grade 2 listed building who need to make some amendments to the outside or something. That's a big chunk of what a local authority planner will do. They'll assess those applications against the local policy and will make a decision as to whether or not they feel that planning permission should be granted, or if it is within the remits of permitted development. And then as you progress throughout the council, you get more senior and you start doing major development works. You start working on much more longitudinal projects, including sort of major redevelopment sites that are a specific target area for the council. So, this could be major town centre regeneration, large out of town housing schemes or industrial units or things like that. And at that point, you work a lot more closely with the developer over the lifetime of the project, whereas when you're doing those smaller applications, you just get the application in, you assess it, you determine it, it goes out. Whereas those bigger stages, there's a lot more work that goes in up front before all of the pre-planning work is a lot more diligent at that stage. So the second kind of planner is on the flip side of that, and that's working in private consultancy. So that's where you work on behalf of developers, and you will have developers as clients. Now, these could be a multitude of people. I've worked in consultancy for 2.5 years, and I had so many different kinds of clients. In one of my consultancies that I worked in, we had clients such as IKEA and British Land. So we were managing their assets and their land interests. And basically there was a long-term asset management with them a lot. So that was if there was some repairs that needed doing, or they were reconfiguring their parking, little things like that actually often came up, particularly with things like IKEA, where they needed to do some works to the side of the building, which meant actually extending a bit, or they wanted to add in those pickup points within the car park that required planning permission. So there was a lot of maintenance works with clients like that. I also had clients who were fund managers who were looking to invest in property. So that was sort of bringing forward development for the purposes of basically just adding to someone's funding portfolio. So that was sort of looking at major housing schemes, or one particular example I worked on was a major investment zone up in North Yorkshire. So it was a multitude of clients who had a multitude of requirements. Because they were all very different, it was there was a lot of juggling involved in consultancy, because there is no client that is more important than the other. Everyone is important, They ring you, you answer their problem. So it was always a lot of work to be done just to keep abreast of what was going on, never mind get all the work that you needed done. But consultancy comes with real benefits as opposed to working at the council. So if you're able to handle the pressure of consultancy life, it can be very good. Now, the third type of work that a planner could do, which is the work that I've been applying for recently, is what would be called a sort of in-house role. And that is, as the name suggests, working in-house at a company. So an example of this is back when I first started this channel in 2020, I was working in-house at the NHS. So I was a planning advisor working for the NHS, advising trusts and CCGs and other bodies on planning matters for the management of their land and their estate. And there's a multitude of different kinds of roles available. I've been looking at roles working actually almost as a civil servant kind of thing, working for Homes England or the Department for Housing. I think the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government these days is what they're rebranded as most recently. And that is bringing your planning knowledge into a business or a company and being able to advise them on their specific needs or assets or whatever it is. Now, it goes without saying that there's no one role that's better than the other. I think there can be quite a lot of tendency to be look down a little almost on local authority planners and to be a little bit snobby about people who work for the council. But to be honest, they deal with so much. They have to deal with a lot. They get handed so much. Like, local authority planners deserve our respect and our compassion. The work they do is very, very hard and they are not rewarded particularly well for it. They are public servants in that aspect. And in that same vein, I think there sometimes can be a little bit of misunderstanding between local authority planners and consultancy planners. I'd like to think that people who are in-house sit somewhere in the middle. I'm not entirely sure. But no one is better than the other. And quite honestly, if you don't know what you want to do, I would suggest trying them all. I think everyone should do local authority work at some point in their life just to experience it and to understand what it's about. And if nothing else, like I say, to gain that empathy for planners in the council. But don't necessarily make it your life's mission to stay at the council forever. I think it could be very good to branch out and learn a little bit more. I have done all three sectors of work, and for me at this moment in time, I don't particularly think I want to do consultancy again for a little while. That's because it does require quite long hours and quite a lot of very hard work, and I just need a little bit of a break from that. So that's why I'm sort of looking more towards the kind of in-house role, or maybe even another council role, I don't know. But I'm glad I did that consultancy. I'm really, really glad to have that experience under my belt. So I do highly advise that anyone who's looking to get into planning tries a little bit of here, there and everywhere. It's, despite what older people tell you, it is not a bad thing to move jobs. It's actually really useful. First of all, it's the best way to get a pay rise. And secondly, how do you know what you like if you've only stayed, or you don't like if you've only stayed in one place your whole time? If anyone has any questions about any of this kind of stuff, or is also job hunting at the moment, either leave me a comment below, or I'm going to leave all my contacts in the description bar below. But I'm very active on my TikTok account, so come and see me over there, send me a message, and I'm always happy to chat. And thank you very much for watching. Why is it I always make a tea and then forget that I've made it? It's gone really cold now.